Hi, this is Greg Uland with Reynolds, and this is Connected, live at the NADS show here in Las Vegas. Excited about this conversation. I get to sit down with Justin Oesterle, the CEO of RouteOne. Justin, thanks so much for joining me.
Real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, RouteOne, I want to hear a little bit about your background. It's a company that is right in the middle of so much in the auto industry. So, wanted to hear a little bit about you, how you got into this role, and maybe even before that, how you got into automotive. If you don't mind sharing to start.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. The way I got into RouteOne was secondhand through Deloitte Consulting.
Okay.
And specifically, when I was at Deloitte, we had sold several engagements to Chrysler Financial. My project sponsor at Chrysler Financial was recruited to become the first CIO for RouteOne.
Okay.
And he thought it might be a fun place for me to come and meet some people for a couple of years. And so I did. I planned to be at RouteOne about 2 years. That was 2002. And then I'd go back to Deloitte and make partner and everything would be great. And I'd ride off in the sunset.
That was the life plan.
Yeah, that was the life plan.
Yeah.
But one thing led to another. And after RouteOne, which was a project at one point, became a company,
right.
I thought I'd get a few more years of experience because our CEO gave me the opportunity to run operations. I was about ready to go. And then he gave me the opportunity to run product development, and then sales, and then CIO, and then one thing leads to another. And I'm talking to you here today after 20 years at RouteOne. So it's been a lot of fun.
No, that's great. That's great. And like I said, I mean, really at the center of a lot when it comes to a car deal, right? I mean, you're processing. You probably can tell me off the top of your head. I mean, how many car deals run through your system, your platform each year?
Well, we're in 14,000 dealerships who are very active for credit application. We have more than that signed up,
Sure.
but 14,000 use us for credit application and 10,000 free contracting. So literally millions of deals.
Right.
And we're partnered with Reynolds in a great, robust way. So I think we have good visibility in the footprint that'll be listening to this call. The F&I is how cars get retailed.
Yeah.
There aren't that many cash buyers out there. When interest rates are high, there are a few more, but
Sure.
With F&I, we're excited to serve our customers. We're excited to serve the market.
Yeah. So talk a little bit, if you don't mind, Justin, about the evolution that you've seen in RouteOne since you've been there. So, obviously the last 2 decades have seen huge advancements in technology, right? And the ability to move things to a digital environment. So talk a little bit about from start to where we are today, what you've seen at the company and how things have changed.
Yeah, and I think the best way I can describe how things have changed is by describing our mission statement, which is to have a platform that allows our customers to present their value proposition at the point of sale. So dealers, finance sources, OEMs present their value proposition to customers at the point of sale. And by point of sale, what we mean by that is where decisions about finance are made.
Okay.
Because that is a lot of how cars get sold.
Sure.
With financing. And so when we were formed in 2002, presenting the value proposition at the point of sale meant basically have a good platform for in-store use in the F&I office in particular.
Right.
So we accomplished that mission relatively quickly. A lot of building to do, but we accomplished that relatively quickly. And it was a fairly straightforward process of building out credit application and then building out eContracting. Not easy, but straightforward. It was work
Right.
to do, and we did the work, saw in logs, got it done. But then over time, the point of sale was not just in the F&I office anymore.
Right.
It was in the showroom, it went online, and so while our mission didn't change, our strategies about how to accomplish that mission very much did.
Sure.
And so there's been an increasing push for automation, for efficiency, and allowing for business to be conducted wherever customers are, which more and more is online.
No, you're right. So what has that journey been like? Because it sounds simple, right? You have digital tools. The digital tools are in the F&I office. And then you move the digital tools to the sales floor. And then you move the digital tools to the website. But it's not that simple, right? I mean, there's so many different pieces to that puzzle. And as much as we want that process to be unified and seamless, in so many instances it's not, right?
Yeah,
So
that's right.
So what does that look like?
Yeah, and I think maybe a good way to give an example of it is the method by which we integrate. So we are a real specific solution. We have a very specific mission in F&I, as I described.
Right.
But we know that we sit amongst a workflow. And
Yes.
so there's systems that precede us and systems that succeed us in the dealership process. And we manage those by integration. And just with Reynolds, we started out with a simple data integration from the DMS. Then Naked Lime existed, so we had an online presence. And Goo existed, so we had that.
Yep.
You built out DocuPad, we integrate to that. So we thought we accomplished the mission when we did data integration. But there have been 3 subsequent iterations of that to expand so that dealers are in a position to create efficiency for themselves and for customers as the market evolves. So that's a bit of what I mean when I say that things evolve.
Right.
It gone from 1 to 400% growth in the number of integrations
Right.
to support that process, just with that one important partner, Reynolds and Reynolds.
Yeah, and that's just one spoke of what you're doing, really, right? I mean, you think about, to me, it seems like, and maybe you have a different perspective, but outside looking in, it seems like what the work that you probably have to do with lenders is the most intense, I would guess. I mean, that seems like the one that seems to be the most difficult to get locked in and get the lenders kind of dialed in. I mean, the big ones, sure, you have those in place. That's not a big deal. But as you try to onboard some of these smaller ones and credit unions and all these different pieces to that puzzle, that seems to be where it just gets more and more complex.
It is a lot. It has been a lot of work.
Yeah.
We have 1,500 lenders on the platform, and that's not something you're going to do in a year or 2 years or even
Right.
5. It's been, we've been around for over 20 years, and we are continually building on. And you're right that each one of them is a lot of work. However, we've over time built a bit of a playbook on how to do it.
Good.
So we've been able to manage it. And we've also identified that in the cases that you described, smaller credit union, they might need a simpler tool. So we have a very lightweight, partially integrated solution for some of the customers who don't have a large IT department. And then we have a much more sophisticated toolkit for those who do. And those enable different things in terms of customer experience. So we built that out. But I would say the point of complexity that I would share with you is, I mentioned that we started out just having a platform to deliver value in F&I.
Yep.
And that was a mission. We had our own website, self-contained universe. But I mentioned the Gubagoo and DocuPad integrations. That is some real complexity.
Oh, yeah.
Because what we're trying to do is allow for all of the decisions that a finance manager might make to either be conducted efficiently through configuration or allow interplay with a different user interface than we built ourselves. So there is a lot of heavy lifting on the back end to make those things work, especially with DocuPad.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, but it's very, very high value.
Yeah, no, 100%. And the more you can, create that seamless experience for not only the consumer, but for the dealership employee too, the more value you're adding. I see it all the time where, yeah, we have a way to make it a great customer experience, but man, it's hard on the person in the store.
Yeah.
It's just hard.
That's right.
And nobody in the store doesn't have the customer's experience front of mind. Like, everybody's trying to give the customer a great experience. Sometimes they just don't have the tools in place to do it.
That's
At
right.
the end of the day. So having those pieces tied together is important.
Well, it is 100%. And I would submit that an investment in making the process better for a dealership employee is also going to have a positive impact on what you do for a consumer. Because if they're not in the business of swiveling between different systems, they're spending more time looking, engaging, reading body language, building a relationship so that they can create a deal that's profitable for the dealership and really good for the consumer. Make sure it's properly protected and just have a seamless process. Hopefully less time, because there's a direct relationship between customer sat and time in F&I.
Yeah. No, the word you use, swivel, it's it's funny because it draws into, line of sight, a true visual of somebody literally in a swivel chair.
Yes.
You got a monitor here. You got a monitor here. Oh, 1 second. Right? Like,
those phrases come from the real world. And when I'm doing either of those, I'm not focused on the customer.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to make great.
Yep. So that's a good call. So at this point, well, I guess first let me ask this. So there are some smaller lenders out there that may not eContract yet, or may not eContract with RouteOne yet. If a dealer has one of those and they do want to encourage them to move to eContracting, what's that process even look like? Does the dealer say, hey, reach out to RouteOne? Like, what does that process look like? How does it go? How long does it take? Like, is there an easy way to do it?
There is a straightforward way to do it.
Okay.
Nothing's totally easy.
Different word, okay.
Yeah, especially with a fully contracting implementation. That's going to be work that needs to be prioritized. But you hit it right on the head. Dealers will refer to us and encourage their finance source rep to contact us. Sometimes they will contact us and ask them to contact their finance source rep. We suggest that they do both.
Yeah.
So the more places where we can create visibility for what the opportunity is for the finance source, the better we generally end up being. And right now we have finance sources on who comprise probably about 85 or 86% of the industry's funding capacity.
Wow.
The little thing that some folks are generally aware of, but I'll put a fine point on, financing gets micro-market very fast. We have 1,500 finance sources on the platform. The top 100 of them probably represent 90% of funding capacity, and it gets micro-market pretty quickly after that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that because they don't play an important role in the market. they very well may in the local market they serve. The local credit unions, those are very meaningful for dealerships, because the way we see contracting being the most successful is when they don't have to think about which lenders they can e-contract with.
Right.
If I have a full portfolio, I have consistency of process, and I'm more likely to be able to train, direct, and be successful in getting that one process executed again and again.
Yeah, well, it gives you more options, right? It really does. So we talk a lot about, in some of our reporting that we offer to our dealers, we'll sit down and talk with them and say, okay, let's look at your finance sources. Let's look at your contracts in transit, right? Look at your average days across all your lenders. Who's paying you the fastest? Who's getting the money in the bank the fastest? Whose response times are the fastest? And you can kind of go through, and then you can say, okay, all the other elements equal, right? Are the rates equal? Is everything similar? If so, why wouldn't you point the deals to the lender that's going to pay you the fastest?
Yes.
So having the ability to look at various lenders when you're doing that, that's a big value add, and being able to make an educated decision on where to send the contract.
Yeah, huge. And contracts in transit now, there's always a value proposition for it. But with the interest rates that we're seeing right now, we have a calculator, and the value proposition that we can demonstrate to a dealer of just money sitting on the table for them to take for reinvestment in their store, reinvestment in their processes, there's an incredible value proposition just on that, before we get into some of the other things that are pain points related to the physical aspects of paper contracting.
Yeah, for sure. So at this point, you mentioned paper contracting, and I do want to circle back around on that. But at this point, there's not a lot of dealers that aren't e-contracting on some level, right? Most of them are doing it fairly regularly, if not trying to be entirely in an e-contracting environment. I mean, you're going to have deals where you have to go through a specific lender for different use cases, but for the most part, I was in a room, we were talking before we started recording, I was in a room yesterday with 150 dealers, and I asked the question, I said, okay, show of hands, whose preferred lender is not e-contracting? And no hands went up, right? So for the most part, everybody's there, but that doesn't mean that they're all doing it the same way, or that it's efficient, or that it's not difficult. So from your perspective and what you see, what are some of the biggest hurdles when dealers are e-contracting, whether it's with the dealer, whether it's with the lender, or somewhere in between? What are some of those big hurdles to look out for that can maybe be overcome?
Yeah, I think the biggest single thing, and it's a boring answer, but people who work in dealerships will hear it a lot, is just how hardened in processes are and how resistant to change things can be when those processes are so well adopted over a long period of time. It's not always obvious to an operator that there could be a better or more efficient way. And even if they get the idea of a better or more efficient way as a concept, putting the work in to do it can be a challenge.
Yeah.
So it's some of the ways we measure things are reflective of that. When we have a dealership who does one e-contract, we don't consider that they are converted over for e-contracting.
Right.
There's a magic number of 10 per user.
Okay.
If we can get an individual user to have done 10, they generally see it as more efficient, better for them, better for the customer.
Sure.
But if they do one or two and then they get in a hurry and they go back to the old way, it takes some time to get them back. So it is resistance to change, I think, is the biggest thing. And again, it's because people are busy on the one hand and they know how to operate it on the other. Getting over that objection, once we get them to that 10th e-contracting, gets pretty sticky.
Yeah.
And to your point, I think there's enough of a track record now at the industry level in terms of adoption. We are demonstrating value.
Right.
People don't adopt things for fun. People adopt things because they can do it better or it makes them money.
Right.
One of those two things. In this case, it's both.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of energy, I think, in the market. But I would say, just to frame it a bit in terms of where we are with adoption, about a little more than 2/3 of dealers are taking advantage of e-contracting.
Okay.
That's pretty good adoption.
Yeah.
But there is still
higher,
opportunity. Yeah, there is still opportunity to go further. And some OEMs are at 90%.
Sure.
Toyota's there, Ford is there, Hyundai's very close to there. So there are some lenders who have demonstrated it and gotten it well adopted in their dealer body for the deals that are done with the captive. Everybody outside of those captives, we measure them separately. So if you exclude the big guys, it's about 70% adoption of e-contracting overall. 70%, 7 in 10 deals that could be e-contracted are.
Yeah.
So again, that's a pretty good number, especially since we started at 0 several years ago. But there's still opportunity, we believe, to further penetrate and just capture the value that's on the table for dealers and for finance sources.
Yeah. So you mentioned Hyundai. So I'm curious what your perspective is. They just announced their deal with Amazon, right, where they're going to move to kind of a full e-commerce model that's available online coming this probably spring, summertime. It'll be interesting to see how it all shakes out and how it works. They've had a partnership for a while, but they want to move to this true retail environment. And I don't know all the details. I don't know how much you're involved in it, but when you think about financing the deal, my assumption is it'll all be through the captive lender. And are there any wrinkles there that you could imagine where there might be issues or just maybe even things to look out for? I'm really intrigued by this, and I'm most intrigued by how it's going to fit in with the dealer body.
Yeah.
But we'll work through all that. We always do. But when you think about the contracting piece and the financing piece online, there's just a lot of complexity to it when that person's not sitting across from you. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on it at all that you want to touch on.
Yeah, and I'll generalize away from Amazon in particular and just talk about digital retailing in general. You're right that getting the dealer engaged in the process from our perspective has been key to the more successful implementations. So we support literally dozens of digital retailers with our services. Everything we do in store, very high level, everything we do in store, we have service enabled so that we can support digital retailers' workflow, and credit application is a mature service. We have an F&I widget to plug in for protection products, and we have an auto e-contracting service that we can plug into third parties as well.
Okay.
And I'd say the biggest challenge right now to move from really sophisticated lead gen and shopping, which is where many entities are, into actual transactions, is getting a sufficiently customer-friendly experience for identification of risks and pairing of protection products in F&I, because dealers don't really want a customer to go off the lot without the benefit of protections. It's an important profit center for the stores, and it's very important for the customers to make sure that the vehicles they're purchasing are protected. So until that's really fully adopted, I think while we have the technical ability to do e-contracting online, I think it would be wise for dealers to have an off-ramp so that they can engage with customers and make sure it's a package that makes sense for them.
Yeah.
So the technology, it's not perfect, but it is there to facilitate an online transaction. The other elements of it that I described, of whether a customer is really well positioned to fully create the deal on their own, they usually benefit from the help of a professional to get there. Yeah, that's what we've seen so far.
Well, and they see value in it even, right? So you talk to consumers. We've done a lot of studies and surveys with consumers, and one of the things that gets called out is that conversation with an F&I manager is really valuable. Whether, even if, so say it is remote, having that video conversation, that Zoom call with somebody to explain things to you, to be transparent with you, to help you understand what you're buying and what you're not buying, and making sure that you're clear on it. Consumers, love it or hate it, see value in it, right? And that's where, that dealer body, I think in the F&I process at least, that's one of the key elements where they're adding value, and consumers, frankly, are willing to pay more for it because they appreciate the professionalism of an F&I manager.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's a confidence builder. It is the second largest purchase that most people ever make.
Sure.
And it is difficult to get there entirely on one's own without the benefit of a professional. So again, the technology is there. I think it will continue to get adopted well. The configurations are very complex because F&I managers make a lot of decisions, and they engage with a human being, the customer, as they're making those. Some of that can be straightforward to configure. Some of it's more of a challenge. And all of it is what we're trying to support, both with Reynolds and with the general market.
Yeah. So thinking about e-contracting, Justin, in general, and do you see a point in time where e-contracting is going to be not preferred but required by lenders? Is that coming down the pike at some point?
Yeah, funny timing for you to ask. Excuse me. Short answer is yes.
Okay.
I do think that there will be more and more encouragements and maybe even inducements by finance sources to have dealers do e-contracts. One of the largest OEM captives out there is going to be announcing within a couple of months a specific dollar amount that has to be paid for every funding package that is not e-contracted, because the fiscal processing that has to be done is not economical for them. And there is a way that they can make the dealer better and save the dealer money and make themselves more efficient. So they're going to start charging for paper.
Yeah.
And there's another OEM that did it a couple of years ago. So I think a few years ago, it would have been maybe a little bit of a difficult sell. If we were doing this in 2012,
sure,
I think it could have been difficult to say you have to do this and lay down a hammer hard. As we sit here in 2024, with the adoption numbers that I shared with you, we've demonstrated that it's possible
Yeah.
to do substantially all of the deals in an e-contracting fashion. And I do think that the market will benefit as those OEMs apply a little bit of pressure. That's going to lift up everything. So it's not just that they're going to get more e-contracts, it's just going to be in those stores. I think there'll be a natural lift from that.
Yeah.
So that was a long yes. I do think
No,
I do think we're getting there to the point where it'll be required with that in quotation marks. That meaning there'll be a
Heavily incentivized.
economic incentive to do it the right way, with right being e-contracting.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. I actually forgot about the fees that will be coming for for certain.
Yeah, and individually they add up. And the funny thing about it is it's a bit of a double whammy. If you have to send in a physical package, you're paying to do that.
Right.
So that's several nice things about e-contracting. You mentioned one earlier with contracts in transit, that goes away. But you got to pay for a funding package to get somewhere.
We pay for the paper, you pay for the toner, you pay for the expedited shipping.
Yes, all of it goes on. And then if you get charged again for the entity who received it, I mean, at what point are it's just, there's so many obvious value proposition points. Goes back to my long yes to your prior answer. Are we getting to the point where it's going to be required? I do think we're getting there.
Well, and I think it's important too, as this comes down the road, that everybody makes sure to realize this is a good thing, not a bad thing, right? You think about all the different parties that it impacts. You have the consumer; they just want a fast and easy deal process. Check, right? You have the lender who wants e-contracting because, to your point, there's less risk, there's fewer people, it takes less time. Why wouldn't they do that? And then for the business, for the dealer, you have just faster cash flow, right? Speed it up and have things more accurate, and you have fewer expenses, like you were just talking about. So the positives are all there. It's not shouldn't be viewed as a punishment.
It's
right?
not a negative inducement. There's a positive story, and we and others who have e-contracting services generally will walk into a prospective store who does not yet know the wonders of e-contracting,
Right.
and will create a scorecard to demonstrate how much physically they can save. And that's very important tactically. It's an important story, and I think worth making a conversion on its own.
Yeah.
There's that much benefit. I would also say that the customer experience is superior.
Yeah.
And the ability to deliver a 2020s process here in 2024, I think is going to become more and more of an expectation.
Yeah.
It's seeing a big pile of paper getting shoved your way as a customer doesn't feel great. It might be what I'm used to the last 3 or 4 cars I bought, but there's a different way to do business that everybody knows exists in this industry. I'm so excited that we're bringing this technology out and helping Reynolds dealers get to where we all want to be.
Yeah, I am too. It's a fun. We've come a really long way, and it's just continuing to get better and better and better. So, well, Justin, anything else you want to touch on, or anything else you want to chat about before we hop off of here? Yeah,
the other thing I'd just say is I don't want to get too much into promotion of Reynolds services.
Sure.
But I can't help but share the work that we've been doing with the Reynolds team to not just have good integration with DocuPad, and it's been out there for a while, but we've further integrated it to create a workflow where a dealer never has to do any of that swivel chair. Even with the best integrations we've had, there is some of that. We have made that go away with Reynolds, and I think it's going to be to dealers' benefit, it'll be to customers' benefit, and I'm excited about creating a win for the industry.
No, that's great. Well, Justin Oesterle, CEO of RouteOne, thank you so much for joining me today, and have a great show.
Real pleasure. Thank you so much.